I remember that. So, if we're trying to find the inverse here, what is our first step?
To switch the x and the y.
Yes, to switch the x and the y. So, this now becomes x equals 1/3 y squared minus 5. Now what? Good. Now, I did see some people trying to get rid of the 1/3 first. You could do this, except you have to remember what? If you're trying to get rid of the 1/3 first, what would you do to get rid of the 1/3, first of all? Multiply by 3. If you're multiplying something by 3, you need to multiply everything by 3. This includes the 5. Ah, I bet a lot of people tried to do that, and that's why they got it wrong. So, first, what I would have done is I would have added 5 over. So we have x plus 5 equals 1/3. You know how to do this, Haley? With this? Oh.
I am.
Uh-huh. Okay. So now what do we do? Hold on. No. We do not square root yet. Why do we not square root yet? It's not by itself. It's not alone. So how do we get the y squared alone? We can multiply by 3, which is the same thing as dividing by 1/3. Now, the 1/3 and 3 cancel, and you're left with just y squared. What happens on this left-hand side? The 3 is multiplied times the x and the 5. This is where people messed up. They just put this. Is that correct multiplication? No, you have to remember when you're multiplying a whole number times 2 terms, you have to multiply that number times both of the terms. So 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 5 is 15. Now what can we do? Yes, now is when we finally square root both sides. The square and the square root cancel on this side, and we're left with square root of 3x plus 15. And we just have to finish by writing f negative 1 of x is equal to 3x plus 15. Now, is this everything that our problem asked us to do? No. What was the second half of the problem? Right. Verify this relation is the inverse of the function. How can we check that this is the inverse? Yes. We need to use compositions, right? Because if I'm sorry, why did I put f? This should have been h, the inverse of h. So if h of the inverse of h is equal to x, and also if the inverse of h of x is also equal to x, then yes, these are inverses. Now, how do we do this first composition? What is this asking us to do? H of h inverse. We're putting what in what? We're taking the innermost function, so the innermost function here is h inverse. We're taking the innermost function and putting it into the outermost function here, the next set of parentheses. So h inverse is going to replace x in our original function. So our original function was 1/3 x squared minus 5. But what are we replacing that x with now? The h inverse, right? That's square root of 3x plus 15. We're putting the inverse function into the original function for x. Now what do we do to solve this? Or to simplify this, I should say. What do you think we do first here? Ah, look, this is the square of a square root. What happens? They cancel. So the square, ooh, big. So the square and the square root cancel, and I'm left with just 1/3 3x plus 15 minus 5. Now what should I do? To simplify. Distribute the 1/3. What is 1/3 times 3? 1x. And what is 1/3 times 15? What's 5 minus 5? So we're left with just x. So this first one works.
Does it always have to equal X?
Yes. Always has to equal x. If it doesn't, that means that you did something wrong. Your check is not working out. You found the wrong inverse. Okay. Next one. We're now taking the original function and putting it into what? Into the inverse function. So our original function is 1/3. Oh, I'm sorry. We're taking our inverse function is square root of 3x plus 15. But instead of writing x, what are we writing? The original function, 1/3 x squared minus 5. So what should I do first here to simplify? What do you think I do first here to simplify? Yes, so here you distribute the 3 to both. What's 3 times 1/3? 1x, good. And 3 times negative 5. Oh, I'm sorry, was that an x squared? Yeah, plus 15. And then what's negative 15 plus 15? So I'm left with just square root of x squared. And what happens here? What is the square root of x squared? Ah, the square and the square root cancel, and I'm left with just x. So, did my check work out? Yes. These are inverses. Are there any questions? Yes.
Can you do like y equals blah 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 blah, and then you like kind of cancel it out as you like solve it to get like. Like that's what I did. So for like this summer, I did.